Hi everybody, Pink Bob here. First of all, thanks to everyone who watched my Finalist tutorial, especially those who commented or subscribed. Thanks so much. And if you haven't seen it yet, that's probably a better place to start if you're new to Finalist, so I'll leave a link to it below. Recently, user @ChazLangley asked about exporting the STEM groups, which I tried to answer in my reply, but then I realized that it's a bit complicated, so I decided to do a video to show how I approach it. And to make matters worse, I uncovered a bug which I should have caught in beta testing. After talking with Tim Exile about it during his weekly Patreon Adventurers Hangout, I've come up with a workaround for the bug until it's fixed in the next point release of Finalist later this year. So let's dive in and talk about how you can capture individual STEM groups instead of just the stereo mix like I covered in my first Finalist video. For this example, I'll be using a recent composition and live in the studio recording called 10 Spot to demonstrate. I'll put a link to the video of it down below if you want to see me torture my left hand with ostinato keyboard bass parts. Now, much like Kawazoi in my first Finalist video, this is a long instrumental piece with about 20 stems, 22 I think it is, and basically consisting of a parade of silly keyboard solos. Stem categorization for my Finalist mix was actually pretty easy. Dueling drum machines and a track of cymbals on drums, Fender P-Bass sample on bass, all of the backing tracks on backing, and all but one of the solos on lead. The goofy electric piano and one sequenced organ, I think, is on aux, which is configured as lead. Here is what my premix project looks like in Ableton Live, just for reference. And here is what my Finalist mix looks like. This is the same mix that's in the video, by the way, if you want to hear another example of one of my Finalist mixes. So that's how the stems are categorized here. And real quick, I'll play a few little snippets so you can hear what I'm working with. So here's a bit of the weird intro. Here's where the drums come in. Here's an organ solo, which is assigned to lead. And here's the slightly humorous electric piano pretending to be jazz, assigned to aux, configured as lead. And this little organ bit here is the only other thing on aux. Okay, if you're looking for a way to export your individual stems out of Finalist, I can save you some time. There isn't one. Which actually makes sense when you think about it. The way Finalist is designed, it's doing most of its magic on the group level and on the individual stems within each group as they relate to one another. There is also no handy Export Stem Groups button, but there is a way to capture them individually for future use or editing, which I'll show you now. So what we're going to do is insert a new audio track for each of the stem groups that we want to capture. Then we'll set the correct individual outs from Reaktor as input to the new audio tracks, and then record them conventionally like any audio signal onto an audio track. So let's go ahead and get this all set up. I'll insert 5 audio tracks, and I'll rename them all so I can keep them straight. 1 for each stem group in Finalist. All right. Drums, bass, backing, lead, aux lead. So I'll show you what I was talking about when I said Reaktor individual outputs. And we are also about to uncover the bug that I should have found 6 months ago. So here on the drums track that we just created, I'm going to change the input device from external in to 1 Reaktor 6. Which is the output of track 1 containing Reaktor 6 with Finalist and my stems. So for the drums here, I'm going to change from the default of Post Mixer to 3/4 Reaktor 6. So that's channels 3 and 4 coming out of Reaktor, and channels 1, 2 are your main Reaktor output with your Finalist stereo mix. And in Ableton at least, as the piece is playing in Finalist, You can see the little meters for each of the individual outputs that you're choosing from. So 3-4 is always the drums group stereo output, 5-6 is always the bass group stereo output, 7-8 is the backing stereo output, and 9-10 is lead. And if we move ahead to the schmaltzy piano assigned to aux, here's our bug. Aux is supposed to appear on Reaktor channels 11 and 12, but it doesn't. And some beta tester who shall remain nameless should have caught this. Like I said, I talked to Tim about it, and it will be fixed in the next point release sometime later this year, but I have a workaround. And my workaround right now is going to be recording the 4 main groups on their own channels, and then temporarily switching aux to whatever real group it's configured to, and then I will record that during a second pass. So let's get ready to record our 4 main groups first. I'm going to arm record on all 4 of them, and I will set monitoring to auto. I'll mute the Reaktor Finalist tracks so we only hear the group tracks that we're recording. And finally, I'm going to turn all of these audio tracks down to -3 dB so we don't blast the mains out that we're listening to. Now I'll just start recording from 0 and let it play through in real time. Oh, sorry, that's the synchronization clap for the 10 video cameras I was shooting. Here's the intro. Note that you can minimize Finalist for this or even put it on another screen so you can see both Finalist playing through the mix and your DAW recording the output onto your new audio tracks. Okay, now that we have those, let's go ahead and grab that aux track. I'm going back into Stem's setup, and I will temporarily switch off anything currently assigned to lead. Now I am going to change anything assigned to aux to lead instead. And if you've done any volume or pan adjustments on your aux tracks here on the Stems page, just keep those as is. Now we go through reanalysis. And now I will have to manually change all of the lead group settings to match what we had for aux. So let's do that. First, we need to make sure the mix preset is right. And lead is currently set to loaf, and aux is currently set to brute. So yeah, we probably want to change that. Unlock lead, find brute, set it, and lock it. So now we just have to adjust the volume. Let's see, from 1.1 dB to 0.5 dB. And it looks like we need to boost strength on lead just a tiny bit to match the setting on aux. And that's all there is to it. We're good to go. So let's go ahead and take the 4 tracks we already have out of record. And we need to set the input on our aux lead track so that it is getting the Finalist lead output, which is on 9/10. Now let's arm what we've called our aux lead track and check our monitoring. I'll set that to auto and go ahead and capture that. Just start recording from 0 again and let it play all the way through. Okay. I'll save this as a new project so that my original is undisturbed and I can go back to it if I want, since I did mess with it a little bit, especially the stems categorization. But I'll also quickly set everything back to the way that it was and then unmute Reaktor. You'll see why in just a moment. Now we should be able to select everything with a Command A or Control A if you're in Windows, and do a File, Export Audio Video. We'll tell Ableton that we want to export all individual tracks. I'll create a new folder for it. Here in my music folder is fine. And I'll call it 10-spot stem groups. I'll give this a file name of 10-spot, And Ableton automatically appends the track name onto that file name for each of the individual tracks. Now if we look in Finder, here are our individual stem group tracks. And note that this one, just called 10 spot, is the stereo mix of your 5 stem group tracks from Ableton's main bus. And this one with Reaktor in the name is your actual stereo mix coming out of Finalist. So that's your Finalist mix. And that's why I set everything back. So I now have my stereo Finalist mix as well. And remember that this 10 spot mix coming from your captured stem groups doesn't involve the cleanup and mastering stages like the Reaktor Finalist mix does. So the two will be different, of course. And that is how you can export your individual stem groups for further processing, slicing, and dicing. I hope you found this video helpful for getting the most out of Finalist. There are links below for the Finalist video tutorial. There's a link for the full performance of 10 spot here in my studio, and even a link for buying Finalist or getting the free trial version. In the interest of full disclosure, I am an affiliate for Finalist and will get a percentage of sales from that link. So feel free to leave comments or questions below, and ring the bell or subscribe if you are so inspired. And thanks for watching.